So, when the names Fiona and Cake come to me, as a pretty massive Adventure Time fan, it gives me a wide variety of emotions, to put it simply. I want to give a little context first. Little kid me used to love Adventure Time for what its pure surface level value was. Fun, spectacular adventures with a magic dog and boy who could always turn my brain off with and have fun. Slaying monsters, having awkward crushes on girls, random, terrifying, beautiful characters always circulated. The few times Fiona and Cake did make an appearance, however, to me as a kid, I always saw it as pretty blatant filler. As a kid, of course, I didn't even really understand the concept of filler until a few years later when I started watching more anime. Honestly, I'd say I probably skipped over or tried to ignore Fiona and Cake's presence and the gender-swapped universe that they were accompanied with, because my brain was confused that it wasn't Finn and Jake. It was that simple. Despite that, I can still remember the iconic characters they were able to establish in such a short time in a series that already jumps around so much in the expansive universe it has established in just the 11-minute episode structure it's been working off of. It's very hard to keep the spotlight on one trope for too long in this show. I think it is critically worth noting that little kid me was watching Adventure Time as it was airing on Cartoon Network at the time, meaning I was watching it in non-specific order and without the possibility of binging, much like I and many people have taken to doing nowadays in the streaming world. As I got older, I started coming back to Adventure Time with a different perspective and a real appreciation for the continuity in the wacky universe. We got to see so many characters develop and have their stories intertwined in beautiful ways that I couldn't even begin to imagine. Even the Distant Lands episodes, which came out a bit after Adventure Time's 10th season, we got to see so many different storylines given such detail and attention in a way that encapsulated the original fun brevity from those 11-minute episodes. So when I saw Fiona and Cake show was set to come out, I was initially very confused. Even after I'd gone back and watched those Fiona and Cake cameos that were sprinkled in Adventure Time, the whole base of their existence was through the Ice King's maze of insanity and how he saw the world. Long story short, they were a fanfic. Yeah, they were fun, but they were just a piece of Simon Petrikov's persona of the Ice King's madness and sadness. So I want to do another pause and just talk about Simon Petrikov, who is one of my favorite characters in any animated show I have seen. In 10 seasons, Adventure Time took this doddering old princess-stealing cliche and made him into a tortured human being who has lived through the annihilation of everything he once knew before succumbing to an ancient artifact's overwhelming and indescribable power. Yeah. This is a kid's show, and this was sprinkled throughout just a few 11-minute episodes to show us the whole piece of the puzzle. The crown, his past with Marceline, Betty, and what she would go on to become. If there is one critique that has definitely circled around Adventure Time, it's the fact that while we saw an amazing journey for Simon, we never got to see real closure for him being freed of the shackles that were the Ice King. On top of the trauma of losing the love of his life in a way that I don't think anyone could have expected.
She did it! Yeah, Betty! Woo!
What has she done?
Betty became this symbol of discord and pure chaos that seems to be the equivalent of a satanic figure, but a lot more mystic and ominous. It's awesome and terrifying. Very on brand. Sure, we get a final montage with the opening theme song and see where all of our characters ended up in the aftermath of the Golb event. Simon is left as this hollow, sad character, somehow emptier than the Ice King, in a completely different light. They switched pure, unadulterated insanity for crippling loneliness and awareness of how out of place he really was compared to the time when he was last sane. So, the trailer for Fiona and Cake finally dropped, and to say the least, I was left with a lot more questions than answers. It seems that the gender-bent characters of Adventure Time have taken on modern personas in a world that is clearly meant to mimic that of the 21st century era, or better known as the time Simon Petrikov was born in and initially lived in, or somewhere around that, 20th century if you want to get specific. This feels almost dull and diluted compared to the world we came to be accustomed to in Adventure Time, even if it was in the Ice King's fanfic perspective. Fiona, in this instance, represents the audience, I think, with her unease and overall dissatisfaction with the world she is in. With just another flash, we see the bland world explode, and Fiona and a newly talking Cake sprawl through the world we are much more familiar with, and what looks like new territory as well. It seems Prismo and Simon are involved as key features, and returning faces like Finn and Marceline, including many more, will be making an appearance in this continuation of Adventure Time with Fiona and Cake. One thing that put a huge smile on my face was that this show does not seem to be pandering too much to new viewers, and that may have its drawbacks, but overall, I don't think it'll hurt the show. All the emotional buildup and character growth that we have seen in Adventure Time is something you need to experience, and will only elevate your new experience with Fiona and Cake as we get to see their stories continue in a strange new light. But it seems like they're still giving us a project with a lot of heart. Thank you, Pendleton Ward. That being said, I don't think this is going to take away from the show, as the randomness and lightheartedness of the universe and a lot of the characters will make it very easy for newcomers to be drawn in and hopefully go back and watch Adventure Time. So, fast forward, and now I've seen 3 episodes of this new Fiona and Cake, and I certainly have some thoughts to drop about this amazing continuation of Adventure Time and the characters we've come to love. Right off the bat, one thing you can't deny is they took all their time establishing characters that we know in the Adventure Time universe and twists that the Fiona and Cake universe gave us on top of that. The entire first episode is dedicated to re-establishing what Fiona's real world and life look like, and the more and more you realize it's the Ice King, a now cured Simon Petrikov version of Fiona and Cake with his sanity back. This puts a much heavier and more adult implication on why Fiona's life seems so bleak and what that and her whole universe really represents. Episode 2 starts and a big ol' smile appears across my face as we are thrown back into the universe of original Adventure Time, characters we know and love. Now, I need to halt and give a massive shout out to Tom Kenny. He has been an extremely impressive performer through my eyes, as he shows so much range and presence when it comes to voice acting. Whether you know his name or not, I promise that you know Tom Kenny. So, episode 2, we are shifted on a whim back to the Adventure Time universe, but everything is certainly different. Time has gone by, and it seems like I reformed from crazy ice magic, of course. Simon is living a mundane life and has even taken up a strange job as a exhibit piece, I guess? At this point, it seems like the futuristic humans we met on Finn and Jake and Susan Strong's Island Adventure have migrated to Ooh and set up shop of sorts. How much time has passed is sort of unclear, but with Simon being a normal human again and not too old, it probably is about 8 to 12 years, if I had to guess, since the end of season 10 of Adventure Time at least. You know what song they had to put on the start of that episode. A cheerful, no pun intended, and chilling sound of the Cheers theme song. If you know the show, then you're like, haha, classic. If you know Adventure Time, you're like, oh Jesus, is this purgatory?
Dun, da, 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 dun, dun. Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot.
Nevertheless, we see Simon start his day and really get to experience the loneliness he's been experiencing since the events of Gold. One of the best scenes I've seen in a long time in any show is when Simon is at the Candy Kingdom bar talking to Dirt Beer Guy or whatever. Adventure Time reference, watch the show. And as he starts to spiral about his place in the world and what positive stuff he did as Ice King, a friendly mechanical hand grounds him for just a moment. You know him, you love him. He's not a fun, lovable boy anymore, but a battle-hardened warrior with an iconic face tattooed on his chest. This also unfortunately implies heavily that Jake the dog has passed away, and it's an ode to his brother. Now, while I love this for the universe and Finn's development, death is always an interesting conversation in Adventure Time when Mr. Camille Nanjiani's Prismo the Wishmaster exists, and is quite fond of a certain stretchy doggo. Finn the human is back, and he's looking better than ever. Jake's prominent lack of screen time is notable, while still giving us some A1 Finn and a surprising TV cameo. No, it's not like a TV, like it's a show. The character's name is TV. One of Jake's Rainicorn pups, also who seems to be a seasoned adventuring adult. Seeing this aged Finn puts a big ol' smile on our face. To know that our boy lived a life he seems content with in Ooh, especially having lost Jake, a very core part of his life. What I love about the Finn aspect here is he tries to solve Simon's problems, or at least distract him from them, by defaulting to a typical Adventure Time narrative of a random, stupid quest that always sort of helped Finn. This is really cute and also shows how apparently that will not work with Simon. Finn was someone who could always sort of punch his problems or at least distract him long enough before he finds a solution, but Simon very clearly, and as we know, grew up in a different time. He is experiencing some demons that go further than a quick adventure fix being the solution. This montage of him seeing all of this weird stuff in Ooh and how it's inspired all of the characters we saw in episode 1 of Fiona and Cake gives such a beautifully tragic explanation of how Simon is feeling now that he is no longer this magical being. Simon turning to this occult style ritual of reaching out to Gabe is such a perfect and dark direction to go, especially knowing what Betty did to save Simon.
I wish to banish Gabe from this world. Uh-oh. I wish for Gabe to disappear. I wish for Gabe to disappear! No! He's too strong! Even for the crown! However, it has to happen. I wish for the power to keep Simon safe.
Throughout Adventure Time, Gabe was referenced in such a vague manner that gave very little insight to how people view and try to interact with this Gabe entity, seemingly the opposite of Glob, which is Ooh's essential god, who was the king of Mars too. I won't go into it. Now we see a front row perspective on where Simon is going to turn to try to feel a sense of belonging again, to find his missing half once again. But instead of Betty, the barrier between imagination and reality is shattered. Just a man and a cat. In the blink of an eye, we're thrown into an adventure with Finn and Jake. Finn seems to be a bit younger, and we see Jake is alive and well, carrying an egg for God knows why. And he even equips Finn with the iconic Jake suit. We then cut out after this fun adventure and fist bump to the time room of Prismo, with a bit of a beard and a tired look in his eye. Instead of clicking on the seemingly new button that appeared on his remote, implying some sort of multiversal event occurred, he turned up the volume to further drown his apparent sorrows for the loss of Jake. Who hasn't binged some good TV when you're down in the dumps, right? That being said, you'd think someone so powerful wouldn't experience loss like this. But this show just shows the power of relationships in the Adventure Time universe. Prismo in denial, worlds colliding. It looks like Fiona and Cake will either be fugitives of sorts trying to run from their prison in Simon's head, or their worlds will meld and they will become agents who help Prismo fix what they broke. This would be akin to when Finn and Jake had to fight their multiversal counterparts after their wish went wrong. Prismo's fragility is why I have always gravitated to the character. He has the entire multiverse at his fingertips with the power to grant any wish, and he still experiences human follies just like us.
Dude, I can't believe I died.
He is a dream of an old man after all. Yep, that's canon. I think the dynamic we are on track to see with Simon trying to reel in Fiona and Cake and these creations of his psyche are going to, in tandem, take him and show him how to find joy and happiness in the weird and unknown without Betty. It's one elaborate midlife crisis with an amazing cast of characters to take him through it. I cannot wait to see where they go with the rest of this season. As a big Adventure Time fan, I absolutely love it so far. Be sure to watch Adventure Time, Distant Lands, and the new Fiona and Cake. It's a phenomenal world, and I could not recommend it more enough.
Aren't I so much better now that I'm just a normal guy? Now that I'm not. Now that I'm not. Now that I'm not part of the sadness